This podcast was recorded on March 26th, 2020. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and people outside the binary. This is Less Stupid with Thomas Hiura, a show that's completely uncut, uncensored, and unsure if the country's going to be up and running again by Easter. I'm quite skeptical about that. I'm here virtually, though, in regard to the stay-at-home order that's happening in Oregon and across the country with my new friend, Kate Davidson. Would you like to introduce yourself, Kate?
Sure, Thomas. My name's Kate Davidson, and I am City Council candidate for Ward 2, Eugene City Council. And that is South Eugene, for those who may not know that. The City of Eugene has 8 wards, and I am running for Ward 2.
That's fantastic.
And that was Betty Taylor's seat.
Yes, big shoes to fill.
And she was councilor for 24 years.
Really, really quite amazing.
Yeah.
That she's been able to hold that seat for so long. Mm-hmm. And with that happening, I think that the people in the ward are going to have to make quite a decision between, how we're gonna have a new representation after such a long duration. Mm-hmm. There are 2 people in your race only, so that's pretty nice.
That was surprising to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is surprising.
When you have an open seat like that, you'd think more people would rush in, but
in my race,
just having one opponent.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I do want to ask you plenty about that, but the way that I typically start these is by asking, just generally, what's a controversial opinion that you have about anything?
I have so many.
That's good.
Well, I think that the city, I don't know if this is controversial, but it's true. In 2014, when they passed the first ordinance, climate recovery ordinance, I'm sure a lot of us are very disappointed that we didn't really get on it at that time. So I think that we should have distributed energy by now, where we all have our solar panels or wind turbines that never got deployed. And it really needs to happen now. So that's kind of controversial, that idea, because it upsets eWeb and the utilities when you're not plugged into the grid. But there's a way to do it where you can sell energy back.
Right.
So I think PV is the way to go. That and wind energy is the most efficient.
Can you explain what PV is for people who might not be aware?
Photovoltaic on homes.
Okay.
And I think that you interviewed Uke recently.
Who I did.
Also, there are a number of people who are kind of coming out of the woodwork, noticing that we could do that. We could deploy that. And it would be really important to start doing that now.
Absolutely. Well, what would you say to people who say, climate change, while it's important, it's something that is a global issue, and that no matter what the U.S. does, so many emissions are going to be emitted on the foreign sort of scale. And so then what's Oregon's role? And then what's a small town like Eugene's role in all that? What would you say to that sort of argument?
Oh, my gosh. There's a lot of climate paralysis, isn't there? It's it's so overwhelming to think about, that many of us feel paralyzed with fear or uncertainty. And so I think it's very important that each local area, to the degree that we can, take charge of our future. We can't control the climate paralysis around the world, but we can do a lot to work toward mitigating it right here in our own backyard, and be an example and a shining beacon of light for everybody out there who is afraid to admit that our civilization is coming to an end. It's coming to an end. And there are, we have 3 choices on that.
Yeah. It's
either going to come to an end, we just keep on doing what we're doing, 4 to 5 degrees Celsius, 4 to 5 degrees more, and the civilization it's not friendly to humans. Okay.
Sure.
We're not reaching the climate accords, the Paris climate accords. That's not happening.
We're not. No.
We're not. And
we don't even acknowledge our membership in it anymore.
Yeah, we would like to have a techno fix, wouldn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Technology is going to save us. I don't know what technology it is, but we have Silicon Valley. They're hard at work coming up with something. Let's trust that we will be safe.
The tech bros are always going to save us, aren't they?
Yeah. So that combined with fear of uncertainty, it could be a massive die-off. Then we have our second choice, which will involve many mega deaths, but a kernel of a new civilization will evolve from that. And then we have the third option, which most people like best. Door number 3, we change now.
Yeah.
Immediately, the entire
Yes.
world. And this COVID crisis is an excellent gift in that way, because it's showing us that we can stop, drop, and roll, Thomas. We can just stop. Okay? The oceans will get cleaner. The air will get cleaner. The rivers and the canals, there will still be pollution that we need to clean up. But, I am of the mind now that we need a radical shift in our direction. And I don't see that happening at the city level. I don't see any of our city councilors or our mayor noticing
Sure.
that this is the opportunity that we need to restructure our entire local economy to the degree that we can.
Sure.
And get on board with the fact that climate change is upon us. And this is just the first of many disasters or crises, if you will.
I think that we are fortunate to be in Eugene, although we've also both chosen to be in Eugene, in a community where we have a long legacy of caring about conservation issues and about trying to become more sustainable in our everyday lives. The problem also that exists is some people are, and this exists in Eugene, but hopefully not as much as in other places, just sort of flagrant climate deniers to the point where they almost take pride in their emissions, in sort of, holding up the maybe 0.1% of scientists who, have raised some kind of skepticism and say, look, the jury's still out on this. And the acceptance of science, it's just across the board when it comes to people who are anti-vaccine or any other conclusions that science draws. It's become a cultural issue that I wonder, and you're going to be the one member of an 8-person city council, so I'm maybe throwing some very large scale issues at you, but we expect a lot from our leaders, and we expect our leaders to be able to sort of grapple with these problems that everyday people, are struggling with. How do you think that we can do, I don't know if it's better outreach or get everybody on board with it, at least accepting the reality, like you're saying, that we are in a serious crisis.
Inclusiveness. So we're talking about a public outreach program that is inclusive of everybody.
Right.
And those need to be designed very carefully. And while we do our best in Eugene, as any municipality and any government agency does, to do outreach, we can always do better. So I believe the city needs to start a PR program immediately, educating people on the reality of climate, just like we're doing right now with COVID. We have the gift of this is that we have seen that our emergency operations can come up and running pretty quickly. We weren't really as prepared as we could have been. Obviously, we can all sit back and criticize from the sidelines, but particularly with the homeless, we weren't as prepared. But look at how we are able to suddenly house people. We are suddenly able to provide shelter. Okay.
Yeah.
We're suddenly able to do all kinds of things that we didn't think we could do before, or that we didn't have the money for, or the expertise, or the whatever. And it is true that we do have more money now because we created the state of emergency. So more funds come down, right? And we're able to create more shelters for homeless people. But what I want to notice is that we can do this.
Yeah.
We can mobilize. And it's a great lesson. You know, it's a wonderful gift in a way, even though it's challenging and painful in some ways for people to be isolated and, you know, not know what's happening. So, but we can put structures in place. Like right now in Southeast Neighbors, I just got an email from David Monk, who is supporting my campaign, and we work very closely together on all kinds of things, including disaster preparedness, obviously. And we've got really functional website set up where everybody, all of the 80 block captains in Southeast, have access to this thing, and we're volunteering and putting in there what we can do for our neighbors. And then we are getting our neighbors to come into this hub so that we're all connected really micro-locally like this. And we'll all know I'll know in a 4-block radius. I already do know everybody. And but some people have moved, some things change, and we'll all be a part of this hub, and we'll be able to connect and be a rapid response team for each other. Now, we have the privilege here, right? In Eugene, so many of us do. And we need to...
I would argue particularly in South Eugene compared to other parts of Eugene. Like I grew up in the River Road area, and I'm close with the people in West Eugene, and so they feel kind of divorced from a lot of the investment that occurs, and that they might have a different experience of Eugene. But you are correct. It's we do have a great deal of privilege in Eugene. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So utilizing our privilege for the good of everybody is what's important. But to create those rapid response teams, that's happening now as well, with the homeless population. And I'm in touch daily with Heather Salicki of Whitebird, and she's giving me, daily reports and updates on what's happening on the ground.
That's great.
Yeah, so is Beth Sheehan. She's over at the Mission. I just put out a blog, News from the Front Lines, you can go on it on my website to see that. I just loaded that last night, and there's a lot of news in there from the front lines. People, what they're doing to help the homeless in this situation. And the city has stepped up, of course, and the county too, and they're creating more shelters so that people can have more space.
Yes.
When they sleep.
Yeah, that's ideal, especially because there are a lot of folks in the unhoused homeless community who they feel strongly that the sense of community, and really that's what it is something that helps sustain them and their lives, being knowing other communities, or whether it's the sort of very visible people who would align themselves under what Eric Jackson would call the protest camps, or other people in the very vastly diverse and varied community of people who just aren't housed in Eugene. It can be a challenge to say, you all have to, first of all, stay at home. It's like, well, what does that mean for me? But also, maintain all this distance from the folks who are, in many cases, providing help with food or just being part of a community together. So I'm glad that you have, without me asking anything about it, sort of recognized the particular challenges that community in Eugene faces, and what the city is doing moving forward. And I love that you're connected with Whitebird. So thank you for that. Yeah. So there is a big age difference between you and I. I'm 26, and what is your age?
55.
55. Okay, so
it's 55.
It's not a gargantuan difference, but it's certainly a difference. And
you're the same age as my daughter. And I have a son who's 11 months older, or maybe he's a year older. Yeah, they're Irish twins. Mm-hmm. And right after I kick off here from you, we're doing a Zoom meeting, the whole family. My daughter is in North Carolina. She's graduating with a master's degree in media studies from University of North Carolina. They're in Chapel Hill. And her husband works for Duke. They met in high school at South Eugene High School. when they were children, basically, right? And got together and lived together during college, undergraduate here at the U of O, and then got married and moved to Chicago.
Nice.
Actually, they moved to Chicago first, where he picked up his master's degree from Northwestern, and then they got married, and then they moved to UNC.
I often wish that I had chosen the Duke Masters in Teaching program over Columbia, because now I get on Instagram and some of my friends from undergrad, one of them goes there and she just posts the most beautiful photos all the time. And it's just this Gothic architecture and the wide open space that you can't get in the city. But anyway, that's all done with. I wanted to ask you, though, because of the difference in age. I guess my question is, so a lot of people will come to me being like, so you're running for mayor. What? Like, how do you think, is this a vanity project? Are you actually qualified, et cetera? And for me, I think that the fact that I do want to jump in at 26 and I am, saying, I don't want to take the most traditional, I guess, establishment route towards power. I'm seeing things that are urgent and I want to conquer them. Well, not conquer them, but tackle them now. And I want to, hopefully inspire other people to run for office regardless of their age. The way I would flip that argument, maybe against you, is to say, so what took you so long to run for public office? But in asking you that question, I think that I'm giving you also a chance to talk about what experiences you have that qualify you. Because I'm looking at katedavidson.org right now, and there are tons of them. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, my journey. So I actually helped run Betty Taylor's campaign in 2008. And
okay, that was a great year for politics.
And I thought at that time that I wanted to run for city council at some point.
Sure.
And I just knew that. It's like when you we have beliefs of things that we believe, and then we have things that we know, right? And I just knew I was going to do that when the time was right. And the time presented itself now for many different reasons. One of them is that Betty is retiring. And I had a sense that might be the case, and she encouraged me to throw my hat into the ring when we met early on. I talked to her about this, and she said, well,
I don't know if this number is coming out of nowhere. Is it 96?
She's 94.
She's 94. Okay.
Yeah.
She will be 96 soon. Wow. And she's still totally, she's totally with it. She's totally a fierce advocate for the things so rock on. Sorry to interrupt. Just curious.
That's okay. So the time presented itself at this time. My kids are gone from home. We're all still a very close family, but and I've accomplished a lot of things that I wanted to accomplish, and now is a good time for me. So and I have a lot of wisdom now at this time in my life, I feel, and I've done a lot of things that set me up to be a really, really good city councilor. I mean, a fantastic city councilor, like
right
exceptional. On. Yeah. And that's why it's interesting to me. I mean, I'm glad that I have an opponent. That's great. You've got to it's good to have competition.
Yeah. I don't like seeing anyone run unopposed.
There's a clear choice between us. There's Johnny come lately Keating, who moved into the ward in order to run for this seat. It's sort of this political ambition, and he's being backed by the Lane County Democratic Party in this nonpartisan race where the Democrats all swoop in and bolster up this.
That's all over my race.
The golden child, and then the Democrats are so clever they put operatives on all of the endorsement committees, and so that are literally like working on my opponent's campaign, and there's just like, well, who do you think they're going to endorse, right? The committees are stacked with operatives. So I
practically gave up on a lot of those establishment endorsements because I'm like, okay, I'm running against Lucy Vinnis.
Yeah.
I know how that's going to go. So let me focus on, outreach to other communities who aren't typically involved. Let me focus on establishing my credibility on my own terms through other things I'm doing with music, with policy, blah, blah, blah. So I feel you on that front.
It's good. And it's okay. I mean, that is the way it works. The social capital arena,
sure.
I'll scratch
I don't
your
fault
back,
them for it, really.
Scratch mine. And that's what people tell me. So Lucy said, I talked to her, asked her for her endorsement, and Lucy and I are friends. We, we're not friends, but
Sure.
and I'm not even going to say we share a child because it's not my child, but Ed Vinnis spent a good deal of time over here in high school. And
Wow. Okay.
I joke around sometimes that I helped raise that kid during high school. He's in the clique with my son and they're all besties. And then he dated my daughter for a while.
Oh my gosh.
In high school. Yeah. So, and I love Ed. I love Lucy's kid. He's a great kid. And I used to see him every day. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with this other than,
really what qualifies you and what experiences like, for my average viewer / listener who is totally unfamiliar with you and maybe not even that familiar with local politics.
Yeah.
What have you done?
Well, I came to Eugene in 1990 and landed here and immediately ended up at the, back then we called it the ELAW conference, the PILC conferences, Public Interest Environmental Law Conference that the law school puts on every year. And that's a big environmental law conference. In 1991, I met my former husband there, and we started a family soon after. And at that 1991 PILC conference changed my life. That's where I became, I believe, really devoted to the environment and an environmentalist. I engaged in direct action tree sits. I started a little group called WEB, where we put out a Women's Environmental Bridge, which we connected to this group in London. The women had come to the conference and gave a passionate speech and, managed to organize some of us in the States to educate women about dioxins in their baby diapers and feminine products. And so
interesting.
I worked on that for a while. And then what else did we do? Well, John and I got together, and then soon after that, we started having children, but we worked on campaigns. So we worked on the Jerry Brown campaign in 1992 and the Measure 6 campaign. And we were really in it. We met Jesse Jackson. I don't know if you saw the pictures on my website, but
yes, I did see. That's amazing.
And,
yes. Who people my age might not even know, Rant made a very sort of history-making run for president a couple decades before Obama
we were
did,
into
decade and a half. Right on.
So, it goes way back. And then we bought our first house in the Whitaker neighborhood and lived in the WIT for a while. Do you remember Sam Bond's garage?
Yeah, of course.
You ever go to Sam Bond's? Well, we were there.
Oh, yeah. My dad really likes to, way. He likes to go to trivia there. They've got a couple of comedians who host, I guess it's bingo, not trivia, but what a great spot.
Well, Bart and Erica lived across the street from us on Monroe Street, and Bart was a partner in that project. And so we would wheel our babies every day down to watch the construction of Sam Bond's garage, and then we all went to the grand opening, of course. And then from there, we sold the house and moved to Lost Valley Educational Center, which is outside of Dexter. And I was the director of that nonprofit. It's a conference center with other programs too: permaculture, organic gardening, sustainable living in community, and we also had a childcare program, and we ran conferences. And we were practicing an hierarchy at that time. It had been a really flat organization, and then it was operating in the red. And so people realized, let's have some accountability. Okay.
Sure.
We had some accountability. And so while I was the director,
fiscal responsibility, that's something we all
operate.
In local
it's very
government.
Important. Yeah. So we operated in the black while I was there, and I worked very hard supporting the family while my former husband, John Davidson, wrote the seminal law review article, which is the foundation of Our Children's Trust and the work that they are doing in suing the federal government for future generations. And I will send you an e-copy of that law review. It looks like this. It's Columbia.
Nice.
It was published in 2003 in the Columbia Journal of Environmental Law, and it's called Tomorrow Standing Today: How the Equitable Jurisdiction Clause of Article 3, Section 2 confers standing upon future generations. So what our Children's Trust is all about, trying to convince the federal government that future generations deserve clean air, clean water. All of these things that we take for granted are not.
Absolutely.
I just want to read you the first sentence of this. I'm
Please
kind of
do.
rambling, but
No,
I'm going
it's
to read
good.
it to you anyway.
No, it's awesome, and
because
I
it's
have more questions to
absolutely,
ask you.
it's beautiful. And so, anyway, this is where I come from.
Yeah,
This is what I do. These are my roots.
It's long-standing.
This is my heart. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I helped him edit this, and then after it was published, I was instrumental in raising the funding for him to further his work and collaborate with Mary Wood over at the U of O Law School and bring in more conference materials and have a longstanding collaboration with Mary Wood. And it turned into the trust doctrine that they are now using quite a bit. It all just kind of morphed and became all these different legal arguments, right?
Well, I'm glad you have a
briefs.
I'm glad you have a background in fundraising because that's something that I did it when I was interning with Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon and with Oregon League of Conservation Voters, but it has to be stuff I really believe in because I've always come from a low-income background and I don't find it comfortable to ask people for money or to be asked for money. So, but that, in the current state of politics is, an important thing, but also in, this law review and other in education, etc. Yeah.
I actually come from a very low income background too, a very rough background in point of fact, and I'm self-made. I left home at 16. I left home at 16,
Wow.
So because I had to, but that's another story.
Okay.
So I just want to read you the
we
first
can get
sentence.
into anything. Yeah, but go on.
Yeah, this is just so beautiful. The introduction, treating posterity like dirt. And then he has this letter from Thomas Jefferson as the opening. Are later generations bound to consider the preceding generation as having had a right to eat up the whole soil of their country in the course of a life? Everyone will say no, that the soil is the gift of God. And then John writes, the way in which a society cares or does not care for its dirt, its land, reflects the degree to which it cares or does not care for its own long-term future.
Absolutely.
That says it all right there, doesn't it? And then it goes on to create legal standing for future generations. And so
it's powerful.
Our Children's Trust, as you know, has been working very hard to convince the federal government, and they lost their last case in the 9th district.
What was that about?
There was a divided court. Well, there were 3 of them, and they disagreed. But they voted no. They said that future generations don't have standing. They agreed on the first 2 pieces of standing. To have standing, you've got to have 3. There has to be 3 pieces to pass in the courts. You got to have injury, causation, and redressability. So they said, yes, you have been injured, future generations.
Clearly.
We can agree on that. Yes, there was a cause. We know what the cause is, and we can blame. There's someone to blame.
Okay.
But we don't have. We can't give you redressability. In other words, we can't fix it. You're going to have to go back to the people that said no already and that caused it in the first place. You got to go back to Congress. The courts didn't want to fix it. They thought it was too hard.
Yeah,
it's too much. It's going to be too hard for them. Wow. And so go figure. It wasn't too hard to get here in the first place. So but they're coming back around they're going to appeal it, and hopefully they'll have the full court. And as these things wind their way through the court system, and as we have activists all over the country, and even just here in Eugene, of course, you can look at 350 Eugene and all the things that they're doing.
I like the Sunrise Eugene kids
And
also.
Sunrise, yeah.
That if you want to talk about the perspective of future generations,
Yes.
I'm thinking about what Eugene's going to look like in the 2070s.
What
And,
is it
bless your
going to look
heart.
like?
Bless your heart. I don't think you'll be around. But
No,
I
but we
will
need to
be.
have
And
a
so,
vision for it and start moving
absolutely.
in that direction, Thomas. It's very
Hmm.
important.
It really
So
is.
I haven't received any of the environmentalist endorsements. I didn't get
Hmm.
MRG or Sierra Club or any of those folks because once again,
Hmm.
the establishment goes with even the Sunrise
Sure.
Movement. They have
Hmm.
the, and I'm like, that's
Yeah,
okay.
I
That's
noticed
good.
that.
It doesn't. I don't need an endorsement from an organization to tell me what my values are. Okay,
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
don't. So,
Hmm.
and after that happened, I feel it stronger than ever. It's like,
I
okay,
love
it's
it.
on.
Yeah.
It's on. So
Well, if we can be competitive about sports and about a whole bunch of
yeah,
other things, let's compete to see who can be the best protectors of our climate.
yeah,
You know what? So I
I
love
think
that
so.
you have a fire lit up under you on that. Um,
Hmm.
but but
So this is where I come
yeah,
from. Um,
absolutely.
so living on a sustainable living intentional community, consensus based community with 35 other people
Wow, no
and a
shit.
stream of interns and apprentices coming through and working on the land and living in micro housing and um, using consensus based decision making and caring for the land and being a steward of the land. And we were there during Y2K. Okay.
Okay.
You don't remember
I
Y2K.
was 7.
It
I
was
was
a really,
yeah.
and we're out there on the hippie commune and we're all like, oh my God, Y2K is coming and we might end up um, not having computers or whatever.
The traffic lights are all going to fail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of it was going to fail. So we prepared.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to say that Lost Valley still has bins of grains and beans, but they might. We set up gray water systems. We set up we set up to be prepared for a long drought of technology.
Sure.
It was interesting. So there were some
That
people,
sounds unimaginable today. Right?
doesn't it?
So
Yeah.
much of what we've been sort of suggested to do and asked to do is oh, my phone sort of stopped recording. So much of what we've been expected to do is you know I saw Jamie McLeod Skinner talking to Lucy Vinnis on live stream, and she was talking about how before I was so concerned about all the screen time for my kids, like what are we doing? And then
Yeah.
now there's the stay-at-home order. It's like, well, there's always screen time if you're bored, and doing what we're doing right now. But I think it's good that you have that background because yeah, we my generation and the Zoomers below me, I'm a millennial. It's practically unimaginable for them to not
Yeah.
have the
Well, we didn't
really.
let the kids have screens and we didn't let
Yeah.
them have plastic toys. So,
Wow. Yeah. Right on. You
it
really
was
are living it.
yeah, we really were in it there. And
Hmm.
my son said to me one time that he still had a little bit of a resentment that he needed to clear about not letting them have screen time early on because a lot of his buddies are making a lot of money as programmers. And he was like, well, I could have done that too if I had more. I'm like, you need to be thanking me, young man. You're not spending all that time
Sure.
programming.
Well, I think about it too from the perspective of anxiety disorders, and
Yeah.
that are very much on the rise, at least in terms of diagnosis, but I think in terms of the actual presence of them as well, because I am so accustomed, and people are so accustomed to having information, like it's not hardly even in the blink of an eye. It's quicker, that when you don't have it or when it's cut off, you do feel this sense of like
Oh, yeah.
weird urgency that's
Absolutely.
artificial.
No, I still to this day believe that young children should not be watching screens or playing on those games. It's too violent. There's too much violence and it's too fast.
It's impossible
and it's
to
not normal.
filter
It's
it
not
all out.
natural. And we need to be in nature as much as we possibly can. I believe that to be the truth.
I love it. Well, you've talked a lot about the climate, and I'm glad you did. But let's say that it's January 2021, and you've been elected, and you are going to, whether it's pass a resolution or bring forward a specific policy goal that isn't necessarily in the realm of the things we've talked about. What is City Councilor Davidson doing as a priority?
Well, I think we're at that time. We will have noticed, we will have lived with COVID for a while, so we'll have that under our belts. So we'll know that we can do a lot more than we thought we could. And I would like to see us immediately go green on every. I mean, this was a 2014 climate recovery ordinance that was, let's just.
You are so ardent about the climate. I even tried to navigate you away.
Let's hope, but you know what? It's going to have to happen. The cap 2 doesn't go far enough. It just
it doesn't.
It just doesn't, and it's actually not a plan because it doesn't have any benchmarks.
Climate
it doesn't have a budget,
plan.
And it doesn't have accountability. Go back to ITEA, okay, and then in its inclusiveness.
It's like the No Child Left Behind of climate policy.
Yeah,
it's like we're not going to provide real support for this.
It's got a lot of graphs and waterfall graphs. I love that, the waterfall graphs. It even has an explanation of how to read the waterfall graph. It's like we really need to be taking action. So the ordinance I want to pass is the plan needs to happen. This needs to take place, okay? And the measurement, if we just start taking action on climate, we can figure out how we're going to measure it in a minute. But let's get solar deployed. Let's get the all vehicles in the city need to be electric immediately.
I totally agree.
And I think that everything that.
So are you saying that you are not going to allow any new fossil fuel development?
No fossil fuels. If it can be delivered by bike, it will be delivered by bike.
Hell yeah.
So let's get that going.
That's, bless Lucy Venice's heart, but I've heard that she told somebody, I can't bike around because I live on a hill. Like, that's.
But we have you can power your bike now to go uphill.
Okay, that's true too.
Yeah. So what else was I gonna say?
Well, that's a great ordinance you passed to really put some teeth on that climate stuff.
I like, I know what I was going to say. Wind energy, turbine energy is actually the most efficient. It's way more, it's more efficient than solar. So anywhere we can use wind, we should do that. And it is true that we'll need to start building up. And so all of those buildings can be powered by a turbine on top of them.
I went to a small college in the Midwest, Carleton, and we had not one but two wind turbines, and they powered on one. I don't remember the stats anymore. I'm not a tour guide anymore, but I was, so I do all the numbers. Like, I want to say at least 40% of the college's energy. And honestly, one of the biggest critiques, which is so lame, such a boring critique, is that they're not beautiful. Like they make the aesthetic of the skyline less appealing, and I just don't agree. If you've ever stood under one, I think especially at night, they're mesmerizing. They are a symbol of really tangible action that we're taking, and there you can literally see them winding up energy. It's taking this thing that's so invisible and putting it out there in a way that I think is awesome. Where would you put a wind turbine?
Well, we don't get a lot of wind. It would be in Eastern Oregon, as we'll have the wind, and the coast. Yeah, obviously.
There you go. Right.
And as long as we're having our dream world, we definitely need a. Though that's not a dream world. These are all realistic things that we should do.
Yes.
The universal basic income idea. It's going to happen because a lot of these jobs are just. They're naturally falling away because of technology. So it's going to happen. And here we have an opportunity to test it.
Wow. So you think that municipal or maybe statewide UBI?
I think it would be cool. I think it would be cool if Oregon figured that out. I don't know that we could do that at the local level, but at the state level, possibly.
Well, this is a great segue. Well, let me add to that Alaska has had a dividend based on their oil profits for quite some time, and the people there love it, and that's a pretty solidly red state. So I think there's great precedent for it. But this is a great time to ask you, as a local leader in the second or third largest city in Oregon, and sort of a uniquely strong voice in the valley where there isn't, basically I'm saying we're not Portland. How can you, what statewide sort of policy initiatives would you want to support, or just how would you use your voice to make our state government hopefully function a little bit more? Because recently that's not been the case.
Yeah,
And it's
I
been
appreciate
about
that
climate
question.
policy.
And I'm not sure that, yeah, it would all have to do around climate policy and housing, because we'll be seeing so many climate migrants, many more than we expect. We're going to need quite a bit of housing,
Yeah.
and that housing should have shared walls. It should be green. It needs to be efficient, and it needs to be on transportation corridors. I think everybody agrees with that. And the state has passed a couple of laws to create density. But I don't,
Can you
I don't
explain
know,
shared walls? I'm actually not familiar with that.
like apartment buildings.
Got it. Okay. All
Sure.
right. Got it.
Duplexes, fourplexes, eightplexes.
Okay. Got
or
it.
tall,
Got it. So
building
density.
up apartment buildings.
Sure. Not just like, houses with all the
Yeah.
separation. That's very 50s.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about the state,
That's
what
great.
I can do at the state level yet, because I'm still telling you my story and my journey.
Right. That's
So-
more of a me question, really. If I were mayor, I mean,
Yeah, if you were
Governor
mayor.
Brown is going to get a lot of texts from me.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I would continually
So tell me
be
more of your
pushing
story.
be pushing on climate. So while living at Lost Valley Educational Center, I also contracted with a little volunteer library board called Dexter Library
Mhm.
to write grants to create a larger library, to buy the land and put a building on there and create a library.
So
and have library
archaic.
service
People don't
out
read
in-
books.
in Dexter.
Come on,
this was
Kate.
this was back in 1997, 98, 99.
I know. I'm
People
teasing.
still
But
read
libraries are very essential still.
Libraries are so essential, and of course we were homeschooling the kids, right? So we needed a library, and what I found was that Lane County is the only county in the state of Oregon that doesn't have countywide library service. And there I am living in the county, and this little volunteer library has hired me to help them grow. And I realized, well, this is part of a bigger problem. Sure, we could raise some money for a building and have a little volunteer library, but then we need to connect to a it needs to be a tax supported system. So I founded a group called Lane Library League.
Oh, wow.
Which is a 501c3, and it was a countywide organization. And I put all of the directors of the county onto this little board, which actually became a pretty big board. There were about 15 people. And I co-founded it with William Sullivan, who writes hiking books.
Right on.
And also endorses my campaign.
Exhibit
There's a
B.
plug for Bill Sullivan. Central Oregon Cascades is one of the best hiking
So many
books.
travel guides.
Great travel guide.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I worked.
Well, let me say that
hard.
the Multnomah County library system is just epic.
Yeah.
They have an incredible amount of libraries. I'm sure
Countywide
that
library
they care
service
about it
is the
all.
way to go. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've lived out of my car, before, and so that was something that I became more in touch with was libraries, and I go to Salem. Salem's got a good one. I like McMinnville's, cozy, but then you go to Multnomah County, and they're just all over, and they're all
Look
just
at you.
nice,
You have been
quality.
on a library tour in Oregon, Thomas.
It's awesome.
Right on.
It's awesome. But I go and I try to find books about Eugene history, and those are underrepresented if you go to the local history section.
They're
So it's just like,
underrepresented.
yeah.
Well, I love our Eugene Public Library, of course.
Me too.
That was built during the time that I was working on this. So I create this countywide organization called Lane Library League, and I capture some money from the state library. It's called LSTA funding, Library Services and Technology Act funding. Write a grant and pull in about $150,000 a year over the course of this project to try to create countywide library service. And the state library was very interested in seeing that we do this, and they saw that there was a lot of energy behind it because I was there, and Bill Sullivan was there. There were some, library advocates. So at the same time, I was raising money for this little library in Dexter, which is now called the Cascade Foothills Library. I raised about $250,000 for them, and we bought the land. We put up a building and hired some staff and remodeled it, and it was a really cool thing. Nice building. Go up there and check it out. They have a nice, beautiful volunteer library there now.
Sweet.
And the reason why it's still volunteer is because we were not able to work to achieve our goal of countywide library service. And part of why we couldn't achieve it is because there was a bureaucratic nightmare called the Boundary Commission in Lane County at that time. And you had to go through the Boundary Commission anytime you wanted to create a district. So we were looking at creating a library district for the entire county. And the Boundary Commission demanded that you write a very complex report on how, Measure 5 compression was going to impact every municipality, and how the districts would be drawn, and you had to get surveyors. I mean, it was really outrageous. And we didn't see that we would have the resources for that unless
to navigate the
bureaucracy. We were divided on that board. I wanted to go for it and overcome the hurdles and make it happen, and put more people on the board and go out and organize for this thing more better than we had been. More better. I love that. More better. And so we had this wrangling on the board, and Bill Sullivan and I were the co-founders of this board, and we didn't get along and we didn't see eye to eye, but we worked together and it was fine. It was like the Sullivans and the O'Donnells. My maiden name is O'Donnell, and back then I still used my maiden name.
Nice. Very Irish.
But I lost and Billy O'Sullivan won. And so it was just, democracy ruled, and it was 51% who voted to just go for a small district in the county and see if other libraries would annex into it. So we picked Creswell because Creswell looked like it had the most opportunity to create a library district. So long story longer, I coordinate the writing of the Boundary Commission report. This fat it was very technical. Trust me. I wish I had it to show you. But we had to create a district and figure out how much we would be able to charge per thousand, 40 cents per thousand or 50 cents per thousand, in order to not get in the way of compression for Measure 5. Measure 5 makes everything very difficult when you want to create a taxing district or any tax. But we managed to figure out that we could ask for 45 cents on the dollar to support this library, and that felt like the magic number, that people would be okay with it, taxing themselves. In rural Lane County, okay, we're talking about library service in rural Lane County.
That seems high.
People don't to tax themselves in rural Lane County for anything. So
I sure don't. Don't tread on me.
What I'm telling you is my skill set around organizing for something I'm passionate about is fabulous. And I helped organize this wonderful group of people. And we went out there and made the case to the residents of Creswell that a tax-supported library would be really good for them. And they agreed. And now, to this day, we have the Lane Library District down in Creswell, and we named it the Lane Library District and not the Creswell Library District, so that Dexter possibly could annex into it.
Nice.
Yeah. Other rural areas around Creswell could possibly annex in if they want to. That hasn't happened yet, and then little by little we would have countywide library service, where in a patchwork kind of way. It hasn't happened yet, but Bill Sullivan and I hold out hope that one day Dexter Library will annex into the Lane Library District in Creswell. Wow.
That's pretty extraordinary advocacy.
Well, if you're homeschooling your kids, you want to have library service nearby.
Yes. Can you sort of, just to make clear, what motivated your choice to homeschool your kids? Because in the U.S., that is done statistically by a majority of people who are evangelical or have sort of religious, whether it's objections to the public school system or just they want to incorporate that into their kids' learning as much as possible. So it's great to have a perspective that maybe that is the case, but I don't know. So what
Yeah.
what
No, it
led to
wasn't
that?
evangelical Christians. We were a bunch of barefoot hippies naked on the hippie commune. You know, we were
That's
like,
the vibe I got.
it was kind of different. So,
Okay.
but we had a whole group of families there, beautiful,
Hmm.
wonderful families, with 12 kids, ages 1 to 12,
Hmm.
1 to 16, actually. And it was a beautiful group to be able to do that with. And so we all took a share of it and had a little informal school. And there were some people from Fall Creek that also joined in on that, a few families. So we had a network. We created a
Right.
little organization called Learn, which wanted to expand the network to other rural areas, or to our neighbors at Fall Creek and Dexter in particular, and raise some money to create more curriculum, specific to what we were doing. And that was kind of an interesting experiment. And then we realized we don't really need a 501c3 to do what we're doing. We're just going to do it informally and teach our kids while living on the land about
Cool.
sustainable living and environmentalism. And they had a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
And they also had a lot of responsibility too, though. And they learned very well at an early age how to balance those two things. And that's sort of the basis of a good life, isn't it? Learning how to
Yes.
balance your freedom with your responsibility. And they're very successful young people.
Well,
I
they've
think
done well, so you
because of
should
the
be
way we
very
did it.
proud.
Yeah. And then we moved into town, into this house on Martin Street, where I've lived for 18 years or so. And we sent them to school and to Spencer Butte and then south. And they did very well.
Nice.
They were ready to go to school. Okay.
Good. Yeah, I bet.
They wanted
Excited.
So,
Right on.
and they did really well there. And they picked all the right friends, not the right friends, but they picked a good peer group.
They picked terrible
a good
folks.
peer group. They didn't get involved in drugs or alcohol or too much partying.
Right on.
We kind of tried to have this rule that they couldn't drink or experiment with alcohol or marijuana until they were 18.
That's
and
cool.
then we'd give them a little money if they achieved that, and they did.
I always felt like I don't know if I would say I'm a naturally lazy person. That's something I used to say, but really it's more that I had this skepticism of authority, and I always thought that I was kind of smarter than my teachers, and maybe in some cases that was true. In some cases it wasn't. And so I was always like doing not the bare minimum, but kind of like skating by and doing my own thing. And so I didn't trust myself to indulge in those kinds of things because I felt like it would easily derail me. And so I didn't touch any of that stuff till after high school, but that's probably because my parents modeled good behavior on that too.
Yeah.
You talked a lot about libraries, and one thing that I think of as essential benefit that we get from libraries is access to arts in terms of digital media, music, movies, even TV shows, and I come at the interest in sort of Eugene City Council and mayoral policymaking from the perspective of trying to think creatively about what can the city do to make a more inclusive and a more sort of prosperous artistic community happen. And so
Cool.
maybe that's kind of a left field question, but that's something that is important to me. So a couple things, I would love to see us have a stand-up comedy venue that is sort of consistent. I would love to see more all ages music venues because that's something that is.
Do you go to No Shame?
I don't go to No Shame. What's that? Is that a comedy thing?
You haven't been to No Shame, Eugene?
No, I have not.
Oh, Thomas. I'll see you there let's have a date.
That would be great.
First Friday Art Walk. After First Friday Art Walk at 7:30, there's a really great stand-up venue called No Shame Eugene, and it's in the building across from the library. the atrium building.
Okay. Ah,
And I can't believe you haven't been. You get 5 minutes. The first 15 people to sign in get 5 minutes on the stage. And I've done it a
nice.
number of times, and it's a
Oh,
blast.
sounds fun.
I've written little plays, 5 minute plays, and I read
Mhm.
poetry one time. And what else did I do? I read a few essays one time. You can just have 5 minutes to do whatever you want, and very talented people utilize that space
I bet.
to hone their comedy.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we do have
Um,
that going, and
that's great.
obviously it hasn't been advertised as well. But it's and it's not really the city of Eugene. I think the city of Eugene puts a little money into it. They donate the space.
Nice.
Yeah, but I'm with you
Okay.
on that one. The
Hmm.
arts are really important, and what I appreciate about COVID right now and everybody having to just stop, like
Mm.
humanity needs to stop, and in this
Mm.
as we're moving forward into the new world and the new
Or at
vision of
least
the
the
world,
idea that the economy is
the economy. Yeah.
equated with, how well we're doing, and whether we're
Right.
taking care of, our essential needs. That the divorcement of those two things is something that I hope is exciting,
Yeah.
because you did use the word gift to describe COVID and a few times, and where I don't think people are going to, take you out of context or misinterpret it, but it is something that's going to continue to kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think that if you have a positive sort of understanding of what's happening, also that, well, now we have a sense of urgency, like real urgency,
That's right.
about the kinds of things that people like you have been trying to sort of like raise the alarm about for quite some time.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
And the arts are so important because that is how humanity grows. That is
I
how we
always say it's the
connect
what
and we
really makes
grow
life
and
worth
we
living.
evolve, I think, through the arts in so many ways that are so important. And I do believe that, our capitalist system is coming, the growthism that
Yeah.
we have been supporting worldwide is going to come to an end one way or the other.
Hmm.
And I think that it would be better for us if we all got on board with that recognition
Right.
and took it as an opportunity to modify our system. Well, it's not just
Well,
modifying, for the revolution to happen, it's going to have to happen quickly, or climate is going to make it happen, and it won't be friendly.
I think that you, based on your experiences, are well positioned to answer this question. But it's is another thing that people often point to and say, you don't like capitalism, but capitalism works, and socialism and communism don't work. We don't have large scale historical examples of them working. How would you respond to that argument if you're going to talk about the limitations of capitalism, right?
You're right. They didn't work very well. There's a dark side to humanity, isn't there?
Mm,
And these systems, can bring that out. Dark side to capitalism too. We see it.
yeah.
So the the best system that will work is the human system, the one that really
Mm,
is takes into account our full humanity, um, and how conscious and aware we're going to need to be with each other and the planet moving forward. I don't know what you would call that system. I don't know. I
right.
don't have a name for it. Um, so you got me there. I'm baffled,
All right.
but I'm interested in pursuing, how it evolves organically is what's going to happen. And that's why I feel like leaders like me who are capable of being in an uncomfortable place, but
Mm,
pulling in the information that needs to be pulled in and um, aggregate it, right? In a way where we're going to be able to find safety through all of this, right? Because people
sure.
need safety. And how do we
Sure.
give safety while at the same time, um, managing the crumbling of the system that's going to happen. Now, it
Right.
might not happen immediately, right, in the next 2 or 3 years. It might be 5 years.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty immediate. Yeah, I get it. Well,
Yeah,
one thing
I
that's
actually think that
encouraging, I
that
think.
climate change is happening much more rapidly than we're prepared for because of the reading that I've been doing, and I think we really need to prepare. And when I get on the city council, that's what I want to do. I want to push disaster preparedness. I want to notice that here we have come through this crisis, and let's utilize the impetus that
Mm.
that we have here and keep going and make a
Well,
radical shift.
I think people win when they have a core philosophy and a real message, and also the credibility to back it up. And so I don't think anybody would be able to doubt, especially after listening to this, that you have that. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about that. One thing that to be more optimistic than my last question about, something else that I don't know if it would replace capitalism, but what our new system would look like.
Yeah,
My optimism comes from. Um, my generation and the one below my generation don't seem to have this Red Scare stigma when you bring up socialism
right,
nearly as much. Where before it's been like sort of a right wing part of their playbook
right.
to say that
I
every
know.
person who is they called Obama a socialist constantly,
Yeah.
and they've called people a socialist so much that it's kind of worn out the people's sensitivity to that term.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at other countries in the world, they have legitimate discourse that includes socialism as a part of it.
That's right.
And we are starting to have that more in terms of candidates openly avowing themselves as democratic socialists. Or maybe you saw Britney Spears on Instagram just yesterday or the other day shared a quote where she was actually talking about redistributing wealth and striking on a large scale. So that was like very unexpected to see. But I guess my point is that we don't see it as this boogeyman. We're
Right.
not we're kind of tired of that easy maligning that the McCarthyism sort of
That's what I
legacy
was
of our
saying.
country
It's going to have a
had.
new name, and I don't know what the name is. You guys, you'll think of it. You know, it will
Well,
have a
thank you.
different. It'll be a different
It might
name.
just
And
be an emoji. We might not be
that,
using
hey,
language in the same
emojis,
way.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm still a novice at emojis. I really
that's
do
okay.
need to go get a little emoji manual.
They keep
Sometimes
adding them.
I'm realizing that yes, I have to start using more emojis now, and especially with my kids, they like that, and all the other millennials in my life, they're always texting me lots of
Mhm.
emojis, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I'm gonna learn this.
Well,
Um,
now they've got like the ones that look more like your face. I just think that
yes,
we're all just gonna be communicating more with our avatars than we are with our own real faces, maybe. But we'll see. We'll see where all that goes. Um,
yeah. Well, it's interesting times,
it is.
and so I don't know what the name of the next system will be, but it will
Hmm.
be a mixture of all of it.
Sure.
It has to be a mix of all of it
Absolutely.
without demonizing any one part of it.
Well, I think one of the things that capitalism, that I don't know if it's just capitalism, but the incentivizing of hard work and of contribution is something that we'll have to continue to be there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but hopefully not in a way where the consequences are so dire for people who maybe are unable to work, or
Right.
maybe you're at your job and you have to tough out being under a boss that's abusive because it's the only job that pays well in your field, etc. These are
Mm-hmm.
this rigid attachment to my livelihood is my job and my 40 plus hours a week. That's something that you know it's falling away. But then you've got like Joe Biden, who is the presumptive nominee, and he talks down to youth for saying that their lives are hard because
Yeah,
he's sort of got
I
his
know.
crotchety attitude about like, oh, we were all going through these wars and blah blah blah. Um, and
Wow.
that's
Yeah.
I am so I don't know if it's a little bit too early to say this, but I just think he doesn't have a chance of winning, and so that's something that's very
That
frustrating.
Joe
I don't.
Biden doesn't have a chance, you said?
Yeah, I don't think
Oh,
he does. Um,
yeah.
you
Well, I
know,
love
I just
Bernie.
don't.
I'm
Yeah,
a
me
fan.
too.
Have you seen my lawn signs? Did you see my
I don't
lawn
think I
signs on my
have.
website? They have a little bird, a little wren in the O of Davidson.
Such a
They're,
great Oregon history moment.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, what's been
I hope you're right, Thomas, that that Bernie will win. That's what's needed because he'll
Bernie
then
would win if he was the nominee. That's what I'm saying. Oh,
yeah, yeah, if he was
I'm
a
talking
nominee,
about the
that's right.
general. I'm talking about the general. I don't think
Right.
Biden will win the general.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
Knowing what
Thank
I
you.
know about the American electorate and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we have to have someone who excites people enough to get
Yeah,
young people to come out and vote for something and not just
right.
say, "Hey, I'm a return to normalcy and I'm not Donald Trump." I mean, that's something that's very frustrating. And you and I have both have our critiques of the establishment, the Democratic establishment, and it just, gosh, they gave them all this practically artificial momentum by everybody just pulling out of their own principles and saying, this is going to be our guy right after South Carolina.
Yeah.
Um, so, well, you know,
Well, the establishment will
but
hold on to
ultimately,
its power in any way
yes.
that it can. It's a power thing, and they want to hold on to it, and
Well,
that's just how it
no
is. And
one's going to
so
be
you
our
have to kind of
savior.
work around. I think about it as water. I'm just a river flowing along, and I'm going to get to where I need to be, and I will flow around the obstacles. That's how I do my life. So, I mean, have at it. Does Keating need all of those, endorse it almost, you look at it and it's just like, that just looks too good to be true. And it's like, well, it is, it's not,
Mm, yeah.
it's the kind of thing where the power in the establishment seeks to stabilize. It always
Yes.
wants to stay at its level, even as dysfunctional as it is, right? Family
Right.
systems are like that too, right? They
Sure.
will always seek to stabilize, even if it's dysfunctional. If someone tries to step out of the patterns, um, the family can't handle that. And so, like, I left home at 16. I had a very dysfunctional family, and the only way that I could um, overcome that establishment was to leave
Mm,
it. Um, I don't see that option with the city of Eugene. We need to engage. So
right.
I have a long history of overcoming obstacles or flowing around them, I guess I want to say, and I'll do the same here. It's not a problem. It's hard work, and I'm happy to do it because it's worth it. Um,
Well, I hope that people in Ward 2 get to hear you in long form in this context and know that you are the one who's really fighting for your people and your neighbors and
yeah,
for these issues.
I
So let
am.
me.
I've been fighting LTD. I mean, I have this.
Oh, let's
I
talk
do
about
this,
that.
right? I'm such a rabble rouser. Like with the library services thing, that the librarians were all on the board there of Lane Library League, and they did not want to have a countywide district because every librarian had their fiefdom, right? And librarians are very politically savvy people,
Right.
and they will guard their fiefdoms with their life. So, that's just another example of how establishments want to maintain their walls. And
Right.
now is the time that we need to let those walls down and offer in new, novel, and innovative, and sometimes uncomfortable ways of thinking about things and doing things. And that's what I
Right.
offer.
Well, I know that you have a couple other Zoom things tonight,
Yeah.
and it's been a real pleasure chatting with you. Can I ask you a final question? Are you
Ask
ready?
away.
I ask everybody, what's one way that we could all be a little less stupid?
Well, I'll bet you can guess my answer. Spend more time in nature.
Ah,
Spend more
love it.
time hugging trees. Spend more time climbing trees. Spend more time playing in the rivers and the ocean and on the beach. Spend more time talking to trees. Spend more time walking in the mud barefoot. All of that. Spend more time in nature and we will become less stupid. I guarantee you.
I adore that.
Yeah.
Kate Davidson for Eugene
Hey,
City
you
Council
got to
Ward
go to
2.
No Shame.
Okay, and people got to go to katedavidson.org and see all this
Yes.
this really beautifully laid out website with policy ideas and your
Yeah.
history
I've
and
been
a
keeping
nice
a
video.
blog.
And yes, you have.
I
You've been
write. I just wrote an
regularly.
article and posted it last night on the homeless news. And the one a few nights ago I posted was on LTD. I'm
Yep. And
fighting
if people
to.
aren't in the ward, I think if they get on your email list, they're gonna get updates, right, about those, or you've just been emailing those to me. I don't know. But they've got
Yeah.
essential info for people all over Eugene.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel too, and on my website you can click on those speeches and little 1 minute and 5 minute pieces, and I'll maybe put this on the website too.
I hope
I
so.
don't know. How will that work? We'll talk later.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it'll be an hour and 10-minute video, and so people who want that long form stuff can put it
Yeah.
on and drive to
That's
work
how long
or
we've been
whatever.
talking?
Listen. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and
Oh,
it'll be available
wonderful.
on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Absolutely. So
Okay, but I want
we're
to give
trying
you
to
a
get
reading
your message
list
out. Okay.
before I go. So here's what I've been reading: The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells. It's a little bit depressing because he kind of sees
Sounds that
options.
way.
Yeah, but it's very important to read it. You need to read it. And then to cheer yourself up a little, after that, read Drawdown, of course. And then what I've been reading lately too is This Civilization is Finished by Rupert Reed.
Hmm.
And then his buddy Samuel Alexander wrote Entropia. And that is it's not a dystopia. It's an entropia. It's like after the civilization ends, then what comes of it. And it's really hopeful.
Good.
And then on my list
We
is The
need
Future
that.
We Choose by Christiana Figueres. And I haven't started that one yet, but I want to just put it out there to people that it looks really good. Another climate piece, The Future That We Choose. And then I get the New Yorker. So plowing through the New Yorker every week.
Awesome.
Especially now they have great articles. Oh, you got to meet Franny. Come here, Franny.
Franny sounds great. I saw a tweet that was like, "Stop apologizing for your pets being in the Zoom live streams. Everybody wants to see them."
Say hi.
Love it. Oh, hi, Franny.
That's Francis.
What a
He's on the
sweetheart.
campaign trail with me all the time. He was canvassing with me when we were canvassing.
Nice. Well, I wanted to say one other thing to the listeners, because here's something that I probably should have had you do, is put on headphones for the chat. I think that I'll be able to make the audio sound fine. It's just I might not be able to add my nice microphone into it because it might create some delay with my voice being fed back. But I know people love to hear me anyway, so maybe they like to hear it with echo. And then the other thing is I try to ask like creative leaders about politics, but I also like to ask sort of electoral leaders about music. So you got a great reading list, but what do you love in terms of music? What are you listening to now? What's inspired you in your life? Let's have that little discussion before we sign off, because that's a great thing to talk about.
So I did kind of prepare for that, and I had to think about it because I haven't been listening to music very much lately. I'm so busy.
Boo!
I know. I know. Thank you for saying that. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about it this morning, going, but here's what it is, Thomas. I get distracted when I listen to music and try to work at the same time.
Especially if there's lyrics for me. And I love hip hop.
Kind of one thing or the other.
Well, I'm wearing this this sweatshirt that is it's hard to really see, but it's an anime girl, and it's from a YouTube constant feed that happens called Lo-Fi Beats to Study and Relax to. So it's almost become kind of a meme online because it's just a very popular source of relaxing lo-fi hip hop. No lyrics, just instrumentals. But yeah, don't cop out on me. You gotta at least name an artist.
Kanye West.
Yay! All right.
Remember that Graduation album?
2007, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
And then
Flashing Lights.
That was great. And then more, this past summer, Lil Nas X.
Oh my gosh.
So
Old Town
awesome.
Road.
Yeah.
That song made me want to become an entertainment lawyer.
Yeah,
I want people
me
to
too.
be
I
able
played it
to cross
constantly,
genres, sample different kinds of music more
right?
liberally, make money off of it. You've got a young 19-year-old black artist from Georgia claiming, country aesthetic
I
and
know.
being incredibly
Perfect.
influential and just being a good young kid too.
Yeah.
So that song was awesome, and I've loved some of his other stuff too. So
I've played
thank
it in
you.
almost all my mixes. And
Nice.
then, I tend to like the environmental artists, Fronti
Yeah, Michael
and
Franti and
Nako,
Spearhead.
and well, that's more like the love, the we are all one. Let's all love each other. And then Nako and
Why would
Medicine for the
anyone do that?
People. Right. And
Cool.
Nako is great. I go to the country fair every year because I'm on a security crew team there. So I'm out there for a week doing security at the fair. And the fair music is fabulous. So pretty much everything that comes through the country fair, I love.
Hey,
Um,
if we got Semple, who's got fair roots as well,
yeah,
and if we can have a majority of country fair folks on this Eugene City Council
that'd be
someday,
cool.
that would be the bomb.
Yeah.
Because that is a great show in how leadership can take on a sort of different form and cultivate a sense of real intentional community that's fun and
Community.
inclusive.
Yeah. I mean, that's my background. That's where I
Back to
come
our
from.
roots.
So the Oregon Country Fair, and then also living on a community gives me, I just really have those. I have those values, those family and community values, and I love Eugene so much because that's pervasive here. Everywhere we go, I feel there's, that sense of community here, and
Awesome.
we duke it out in Eugene. The politics can
Yeah,
get
we
kind of
do.
intense sometimes, but we
I
always
want it to
come
get
out.
more intense, frankly.
Yeah, we
We
come
don't
out
have any
together.
in-person mayoral debates anymore. I think we could still get all 7 people spread out in a
Yeah,
room
I
because
think
now we got to
so.
do it on Zoom, and I don't like that.
I
Um,
know.
but you know
So
what?
Joanne
I don't.
Rand and the Shook Twins and John Craigie, they've all been to the fair.
Hell yeah.
Quick and Easy Boys, and then going back wait to jazz. I like Sun Ra and Charlie Parker and um,
Jazz is
um,
wonderful.
all those, a lot of different jazz musicians.
I like Chet
Bessie and
Baker.
Mahalia
I
and
like Coltrane.
Tina and
Nice.
Billy. And
Well,
then, yeah. And then
well,
if you
thank
haven't heard
you.
the Roaches, go out and find the Roaches.
Okay, right on.
Okay. Yeah. Find
Well,
a band called the
you
Roaches.
don't have to list this endorsement or you don't have to do anything with this, but after this great chat with you, I and my rapper alter ego Gradient, Thomas Hiura and Gradient are both endorsing Kate Davidson for City Council Ward 2. She has earned
Thanks,
it.
Thomas.
And so I hope that people follow suit. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure,
I'm
and
going to
maybe
put
we'll
you.
do
Do you mind
something
if I
again
put your
someday.
name on my website?
Please do.
Thanks.
I'd be happy to have that.
And you can also, everybody, go to Elect Kate Davidson. I do have
Yeah,
a Facebook page.
Facebook.
Now, I'm not great at social media. I'm just going to give that caveat, but I'm getting better.
There you
I just
go.
love all the learning that's going on running for office.
I
I
think
love
if
it.
you're there enough to know what the conversations are and that they
Yeah.
are happening, that's good. We've got some
Yeah.
counselors who don't even have a personal Facebook, and I respect that choice. It's not even a particularly ethical company as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But it is a great platform for a lot of people to get their
I
message
started
out.
an Instagram account too, and I've been taking
Nice.
pictures faithfully and posting on
Yes.
Instagram. I just need to go
Lucy
get more
Vinnis
followers.
doesn't have one. She only uses Instagram to put out paid advertisements that
Oh.
link to her Facebook page. So I would rather she had an Instagram account because people in my generation are all there.
Are you going
So
to show up for her little town hall with my opponent
I think
tomorrow
that's.
at 5:30?
Oh, I thought that was tonight at 5:30. All right, I'm glad that you corrected me.
I think it's
Um,
tomorrow. I hope it is because I'm actually have a Zoom here at 5. So
yeah,
no, I think it's
yeah.
tomorrow night at 5:30, and hold her feet to the fire.
I think that's worth doing for sure.
Yeah.
I'm a pest and I'm pesky, and they couldn't get rid of me at the meetings. They had to shut down the meetings. They had to reduce the
I
speaking
saw
time
that.
from 3
Yeah,
to
I've
2
seen that.
minutes.
I've
And
been at
so,
a couple of them where you were
yeah,
there, and I always thought,
yeah,
well, this guy's got moxie.
yeah.
So
Yes, I do.
yeah,
All
and I'll be
right,
holding my opponent's feet to the fire around
good.
the LCC nonsense that just happened, where they fired so many people.
Oh,
And that was at
So
the very
true.
they used that opportunity immediately. I mean, it just
Wow.
like that. And I'm like, shameful.
Yep.
You know.
Please do that. Okay, I'll try to be there. I don't know how things are going to look. I have a lot of endorsement forms to finish and send back to people, and
I know it goes on and on, doesn't it?
It does, and I feel like I have to give a real detailed, good response to all the questions. Blah blah
Me
blah.
too.
So,
even though you
anyway.
won't get even though I'm not going to get the endorsements, it's like, oh well. I still want you to know where I'm coming from, and we'll circle back after I win. That's been my stock statement. We'll circle back after I win. All good.
Good stuff. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that I think you are going to win, and so thanks for chatting with me. Yeah. And we'll be in touch in the future, and I'll be at No Shame.
Thank you for inviting me. This was great. All right. See you later, Thomas.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.